MK Ultra is now here for everybody. It's in the world. It has opened up. For me, it was really clear right from the beginning that this was here we go. But I really recommend for people to start looking at things like psych warfare. What does that mean? How does it work? Look into torture and the process of torture. Amazing Polly did a really good one on torture.
I'm not in general a fan of her work, but that video was excellent.
Masks are simply part of the technique to break us down. It's the same thing as pumping in at the stores, constantly the fear of wearing a mask and wearing it properly and social distancing. This is just part of the technique. And when you get into looking at psych warfare and torture, you'll be able to see the stages that they're taking us through. And the whole thing is really based on the thing I read in the very beginning. It's basically just to get you to give it all up. It's all about giving it up. They wear you down. This is what they do in MK Ultra. And on a more individual and even more severe level, involving a lot of physical stuff, as well as psychological, is to break you down until you are a blank slate. That's an actual term in MK Ultra, literally a blank slate. And I'm watching it happen out of the fear that people are dealing with. And I've started shifting, we're going to get into, I know more of this later, but shifting into a place of seeing that I am standing before a person who lives in fear. When I'm dealing with anyone. And I mean, I've had customers just go off on me yelling in the store, and not just at me, but anyone who doesn't have a mask. And what I've realized is these people this is just a symptom of where they live. This has simply brought out the symptom of fear that they constantly live in. They may look like a normal person when everything's all hunky-dory and gone pretty smooth, but as soon as something happens, which is the case with a crisis or an event, in this case, I mean, to me, this is another false flag is what this is, even though people are dying from various ailments. So I'm realizing that these people are living in tremendous fear. So my point is, if I haven't made this already, is that I'm identifying very specific increments.
The incremental, yeah.
Question of the progression of this psych warfare, which it is. There's no question whatsoever that this is a full-scale global operation. Stop looking to the PhDs and all the ones that have been educated in the system, which is brainwashing, as well, because they leave out, it's not that what's in there is all wrong, it's that they leave out way too much. So, and many people who have studied in university and become doctors and PhDs and all that have turned around and said, whoa, there was so much missing. Go to the people that are doing the research and have some experience, or stop looking for these grant supported, approved, system educated, so-called experts to talk about the things that they've been indoctrinated or brainwashed to not talk about, or downright threatened, for all I know. However, on a grand scale, this is an MK Ultra experiment here, in my opinion. And I don't just mean the COVID psyop, I mean decades of it. So I'm not coming from a political place. I'm coming from a mind control place. And what I mean by that is when you understand the technologies that we've had for quite some time, what was done to me in the 60s and 70s predominantly, definitely in the 60s, and continued on for years, was on an individual level. And of course, we all know that the numbers of individuals is extremely high. This has been going on for a long time. But there's also another, and this is another version which is en masse. You can, when you understand the technologies, they can target a whole region, they can target a city, they can target a neighborhood, they can target a street, they can target an individual home, they can target an individual person. I mean, this is what it has been for decades. And this area is one of those areas. And there's an interesting, I won't try to get into this, but there's an interesting concept that has been around also for decades, and it was called the Taos hum. So, I mean, just the possibilities of, and not that long ago, a couple months ago, 2-3 months ago, there was a big C-130 flying around. I mean, it looked like it was going to fall out of the air. It was flying so low, and it was just circling the whole region. I mean, people saw it. It was up there for hours. It's kind of like, okay, what's the C-130, just circling the area for literally for hours. And my mind immediately goes to, well, they're probably sending out some kind of frequency off the plane. What has been my issue that I've shared with you is how effective on a broad scale this is on the civilian population. I didn't quite think, and don't get me wrong, I have people here who are very aware. There are people in the town, there are people I connect with. There's quite a few people here that, they're all scratching their head like, what is going on with everybody? Can't they see what's happening? So there's always those exceptions. But on a larger scale, this area, this region has been targeted for a long time. It's also a hotbed for UFO activity. Last year there was something in June in the mountains over the Carson National Forest, and then literally in September, I mean, not actually less than a mile. I live near the Taos Mountains, the Taos Ski Valley at the base of the mountains. And less than a mile from me, there were 6 sheep mutilated. The typical mutilation, which is there's no footprints, there's no equipment, there's no, cars coming in, the people are put to sleep, the dogs don't even, the protection dogs don't even bark and all that stuff. So, and the whole San Juan Valley has been very high level UFO activity literally for decades. So to me, and a lot happened to me personally when I lived here before and was attempting to get out of my programming. There was a ton of stuff that happened. It's a very active area. So, to me, it gets back to really the only protection, so to speak, is for a person to be incredibly self-aware, incredibly grounded and present in life, and have some kind of connection to something much greater than themselves, whatever they want to call it, but and knowledge, because knowledge is protection. There's an acquiescing in people. There's a giving up. There's a handing over. There's a hearing the narrative and buying it. There's no thinking going on there. There's no questioning, aside from always the exceptions to the rule. So, well, what I see is, first of all, the whole UFO issue, abduction, which I can speak to personally for decades of my life. All of that is mind control. But the point is that in my experience, my background is that the UFO, the abductions, the alien interaction, so-called alien interactions, which I've said repeatedly now, in my case, are demonic or entities. These are malevolent beings that are not so much getting in a ship and traveling from a star or another galaxy or another planet, as much as crossing dimensionally into physical manifestation or whatever you want to call it. Mine were directly related to my mind control programming. And just to clarify that, when I had, and I remember this moment, I was living in Moab and I was in deep deprogramming, and I had the moment full on realization and acceptance that these aren't aliens, these are demons. Okay, these are malevolent entities. These are beings that are working for the dark side. as soon as that fully came on to me, do you know, I never had another interaction or, nothing appeared of them in my room or whatnot ever. And this is like going on a decade. Okay. So the jig was up.
Yeah.
The story was out. The deception was no more. And then I could give you a whole litany of how many of those experiences regarding various aspects of what it was presented as. And I had the realization of what it really was, and it ceased immediately, instantaneously ceased. So there's some, to me, that fits into some spiritual laws that are active here in the world that, these dark forces, however they're working, whoever they're working through, as in the case of, this psyop, when you educate yourself and you face these things full on, they lose their power.